this schedule really shapes up for a playoff run with a 12-team playoff.
Areas that, you need to get from experience, which is just, hey, I need to make quicker decisions.
How do you define success for this team?
National championship.
What's going on, y'all? Bud Elliott here at the Cover 3 College Ball Podcast. It is my summer school series where we try to hit as many of the D1 programs as we can, currently pacing for over 70. So very happy with that. And today, it's a really big one. Utah. Newcomer to the show, Dan Sorensen, publisher of Ute Zone. Dan, welcome back, man. Well, welcome to the show.
Yeah, nice to be on.
Absolutely. So excited to talk about this Utah team because despite maybe the short end of the stick as far as the conference scheduling draw, I think there's a lot to like here. I'm very excited to chop this up with you. But first, got to ask about the vibes around the program. New offensive coordinator, the Cam Rising experience is officially over now. That was, I don't know, for a guy who I think Utah fans had to probably love at one point. Like it was just kind of, I don't know, tragic or whatever you want to say, but not a great experience the last 2 years.
Yeah, last 2 years were really rough. Frankly, he gets injured in the Baylor game last year, and it sucked the air out of the stadium and frankly the season. Look, the team goes 5-7 or 4, and just they weren't able to put it together offensively, and it led to the worst season under Whittingham clearly. And the vibe during spring football has changed a lot. They brought in new offensive coordinator in Jason Beck. He's got a lot of energy. He is one of the bright young minds in offensive football today. I think that the things that we saw in spring camp really gave a lot of hope in terms of just intuitive use of personnel and innovative use of play calling and some of those things that we haven't seen at Utah in a long time. And so there was a lot of excitement. Devon Dampier is, he stepped in immediately and shown that he's a strong leader, and the team has rallied around him, and he's done a lot of the right things and said a lot of the right things. So I think that in Salt Lake City, things are optimistic. Now, obviously this year, after 2 years of being, picked high and not, having good quarterback play, not finishing the way that they want to, they have to prove it on the field. But, there's a lot of reasons to like this team and this program and stay optimistic, the last couple of years notwithstanding.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch this. So what did you get to see or hear about Dampier in spring? I mean, obviously at New Mexico, under the same system with Beck, I know 12-12 touchdown interception ratio is not special, but I thought given what was around him, I thought he showed well, at least at New Mexico. What have you seen or heard at Utah?
Yeah, so he, Dampier, he really stepped in. We didn't see all of the practices. We had pretty limited availability, but we did get to see him a handful of times. The one thing that really popped when you saw him live is that he is as electric as you would expect him to be. It's like he's got a teleportation device at times. You think he's dead to rights in the backfield, and he's able to make something happen, find the receiver, extend the play. To your point, the 12-12 touchdown to interception ratio isn't good. The 57.9% passing completion rating last year is something that he definitely needs to improve upon if Utah's going to do some things. But really, where he made his bones was, 1,100 yards rushing, 19 touchdowns, 7.5 yards per carry. And most of those rushing yards didn't come from quarterback scrambles in the passing game. They were deliberately designed runs. Jason Beck, it's a very heavy read option scheme. And so you're going to see a lot of that. So to see Dampier to get to 1,000 yards rushing would be utterly unsurprising. To see him to increase some of those passing numbers and really refine his game, I think that's a pretty solid expectation people should have. He's got an extra year of experience. He really seemed to progress as the spring went on, and making great decisions, showing great leadership, really being quick getting the ball out, not trying to do too much when it's not there. So I think that we're going to see that level of growth in his game. If he's able to actually do that and translate it to the actual game scenarios, he's going to have a big year, and Utah should be a good team.
At running back, so Bernard is gone, obviously a guy who had almost 200 carries last year. But they bring in Wayshawn Parker. Is it Nakari Rogers?
Yes.
Devin Green, a couple other guys. We think in committee, we think in feature back. And if so, who could be that feature guy?
Yeah, if they go with a feature back, it's going to be Wayshawn Parker. He had 750 some odd yards last year as a true freshman at Washington State. Ran a similar spread scheme, and so he's a guy that can get it done. He had limited availability in the spring just because of an injury he was coming back from, but really came on strong towards the end of spring camp. I do think that we're going to see probably a little bit more of a running back by committee. Nakari Rogers last year at New Mexico, was the number 2 back there. He knows the system. He's a senior. He's a leader. We'll probably see him get more carries than he did a year ago. And they brought in a couple of other guys in the transfer portal. Devin Green, like you said, he's a young guy that showed some good things in the spring. Bryce Duke is the spring transfer that they brought over from Duke. He's a big back. If they've got short yardage situations, they'll probably go with him. The other guy, Hunter Andrews, is another guy to watch. He's actually a tight end, but they're using him kind of as a flex position. They did some stuff at running back, at wide receiver, at tight end. He's a really dynamic, fast guy. He's a 4.5 guy and he's a big body, 220 pounds that can get out there and move the ball as well. So they'll probably use a lot of different ball carriers and just try to spread the ball around in that run game as much as they can.
I was trying to think. This is 5-6 years ago now, but there was a guy at Virginia who was basically a tight end, but they would split him out, and they would also, he would get 2-3 carries a ball game. It sounds like Hunter Andrews maybe in for a similar role. They're kind of Swiss Army knife type dude, and allows you to mess with some of those defensive subs. As far as like actual tight ends and receivers, yikes! This room got cleaned out, Dan. I'm gonna need you to help me kind of guide me through this, because I know some of the names coming in, but how do these pieces fit? Like, who could be the number 1 and number 2?
Look, the top returning receiver that was on the squad last year had 100 receiving yards last year. So like you said, the room got cleaned out. So they're really relying on the transfer portal to pick up that production. Ryan Davis is probably the top stat guy. He was at New Mexico last year. Has got great chemistry with Dampier. He's a good slot guy. Just one of those smart receivers. He's not the most dynamic athlete you've ever seen, but he's the guy that gets open. He's amazing in the scramble drill, which is where he got a lot of his yards last year. A couple of the other guys to look at, Larry Simmons was at Southern Miss last year, had a decent season as a sophomore, about 420 yards. Tobias Merriweather, a former 4-star guy, started his career at Notre Dame. He's bounced around a little bit and really just been snake bitten by injuries. They brought him in the spring portal, and they have high expectations of him. If he can stay healthy, I think he can put up some pretty good numbers in this offense. The one guy at receiver, though, that's really interesting and I'm intrigued by is Nate Johnson. So Vanderbilt transfer. He actually started his career at Utah as a quarterback, transferred to Vandy to play quarterback, did not win the job, and we saw what Vandy did last year. Went to the portal, decided, well, maybe quarterback's not for me, and came back to Utah as playing wide receiver. And really, he's a guy that's got elite speed. He ran a 10.3600 in high school, so he can move. They've got him at wide receiver. They'll probably do a little bit with him at running back as well. We'll probably see some creative things, in that slash quarterback role. But he's a guy that got a lot of work this spring, and no experience. We haven't seen it in games, but he's somebody that can be dynamic. And because he's got that breakaway speed, if they can get him the ball in the open field, he's the guy that can take it to the house every time. So somebody interesting to watch, but really, if you're a fantasy player, do not pick a Utah wide receiver. It's just, there's so many unknowns. Look, they're going to put up numbers. Dampier is going to get his. We just don't know where it's going to come from.
Something I think we probably know is that the offensive tackle spot is going to be dynamite if they stay healthy with Caleb, and then also Spencer Fano. Interior offensive line, should we feel good about this group?
Yeah, Utah's got one of the best offensive lines in college football if they all stay healthy. And I feel pretty confident saying that and not, sounding like a homer. You look at the line across the board. So Lomu, potential first-round pick next year. Spencer Fano, probably going to be an All-American first-round pick next year. On the inside, Jaron Kump's a senior. He's got 29 starts under his belt. Mike Mokafisi at guard's got 33 starts under his belt. Tano Tongiai was the second highest-rated PFF player last year and has, 12 starts under his belt. So combined, they're bringing back all 5 starters, 100 combined starts between them. Great chemistry. Jim Harding's one of the better offensive line coaches in the country, and he's really got that group dialed in. They sat a lot of the guys for spring. Some of them were kind of banged up and recovering from injuries. They'll all be back this fall, but they've got a few backups. that are coming up and waiting in the wings, but they can confidently go 8 or 9 guys deep and feel like they don't have any drop off whatsoever. So the offensive line is in my mind the strength of this team, one of the better units in college football, and it really, I think that it should be exciting for Utah fans, at least, because Beck runs such a run-heavy scheme. These guys are going to be able to open up holes, do some interesting things, and really, help Dampier and the rest of the receivers come up to speed while the running backs do work.
Yeah, that could be a lot of fun, and not to disrespect the Big 12, but I think Utah fans will understand this. Like Utah is one of the few teams that consistently puts defensive linemen in the NFL, so you don't face that many NFL defensive linemen compared to maybe a Big 10 or SEC in the Big 12. So if you can just maul people with a creative scheme, certainly can have something cooking there. But Dan, let me ask you this. Is there a guy who maybe fans have written off, or maybe, as the media we've written off, who maybe if he finally reaches his potential, or on the flip side, maybe a guy who, if he can play to his ceiling a year before expectation, that would really change the outlook for this offense?
For the offense, I don't know if there's anybody that's really been written off, but look, that receiver crew. Look, Tobias Merriweather's probably the best candidate for that. He's a guy that coming out of high school, top 247 kid, 4-star kid. He's a big guy. He's got great speed, great athleticism, and high expectations, and just has never been able to put it together. Hasn't been able to stay healthy. And he's a guy that if he can stay healthy for 12 games, he's going to put up numbers. He's got the talent. You can see it on film. And even like last year at Cal, where he only had a couple of games worth of action, he was looking really good until he got hurt. So, he's the guy that I think that could be that breakout that, it comes out of nowhere from a stat sheet perspective and could do some interesting things.
Awesome. All right, let's hit a break here. On the flip side, we'll talk a little Ute defense.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
All right, guys, welcome back in again to the Summer School series on the Cover 3 College Ball Podcast, joined by Dan Sorensen of Ute Zone. Dan, let's talk a little Utah defense, which typically is kind of the more bankable asset of this Utah program. I got a lot of cross-offs on this depth chart. So much like receiver, I'm going to need you to start off by, if you can, walk me through what are we doing on the defensive front here? I'm not saying it's bad, but I have some uncertainty here, I guess.
Yeah, look, and that's going to be the big question mark on the defense is what's happening along the defensive line. The one thing, look, I've been covering Utah football for 21 years at this point, and the one thing that is pretty much a universal constant is the fact that Utah is going to find defensive linemen that nobody has heard of, and they're just going to come out and play really well, and sometimes even be NFL guys. And so I think that you're going to see a lot of that same thing this year. The defensive line is led by Logan Fano. He's a guy that he's Spencer's brother. Was a highly rated recruit coming out of high school. He's had a couple of knee injuries. Last year, he started off kind of slow, came on strong at the end of the year, especially, after picking up with some of the other starters getting injured. And this year, I think he's got a real opportunity to be a breakout guy. So, I think that he's going to be the leader. Utah fans, they love the whole Sac Lake City thing where the Utes tend to do really well in rushing the passer and getting to the quarterback. And so he's a guy that I think can lead the way there. John Henry Daly is another guy that to watch out for. He really came on strong this spring. Didn't play a lot last year. He transferred from BYU, and is a guy that one of those guys like nobody knows about him, nobody's heard of him, and but I think that when the games are played this fall, you're going to see a lot of him. But Utah's going to rotate in 4, maybe 5 defensive ends. They're going to try to find, who's that guy that can really step up and when the lights are on, show us what's happening. Similar on the defensive tackle front, not a lot of returning production, a lot of freshmen on the squad. So that's an area where people are going to have to step up. The leader there is Aliki Vimahi. He's a guy, once again, was a highly sought after recruit, has dealt with injuries most of his career. He was really poised to break out last year. And then first game of the year, just bad knee injury. I think he came back the last game of the season, played well toward in that game. But he's the guy that's the leader of the bunch. There's a bunch of young guys that are going to have to come up. Dallas Vakalahi is another guy that I think that he's the next really good defensive tackle at Utah. He stepped in as a true freshman last year and got a lot of reps. This year will be his year as a starter. Jonah Laea is another guy that, once again, hasn't really had the chance to step in as a starter, and he's a name nobody's heard of. But I think by the end of the year, people are going to be excited about him. All three of those guys looked really good throughout the spring. So I think the D-line is going to be fine. There's no breakout, standout star, no preseason all-conference guy there. But I think you're going to get the numbers there, and because of that, I think the back seven is going to be able to do what Utah does. It's always a good defense at Utah. 8 of the last 9 years, Morgan Scalley's had a defense in the top half of the conference. I'd be surprised if it were any different this year.
Especially because you get Lander Barton back. I mean, losing Kareem Reed is not easy. I thought he was a pretty nice player for Utah over the years, but got to feel pretty good about linebacker with Barton plus somebody, I guess. So Barton's back. And he played last year. He was still overcoming the injury. He didn't have the greatest year. I think that this year he's really primed to have that great year and hopefully launch himself into the NFL. That's what he would like, at least. So I think that we're going to see a big year from Barton. Levani Demuni's the other big linebacker, transfer from Stanford, was hurt. Oh, he's back?
In football. He's back. So
okay, got it.
So he missed all of last year.
Right.
But he played well at Stanford, and so stepping into that Karenni Reed spot where there's somebody that's an experienced guy that can lead the defense. Jonathan Hall is the third linebacker, got a lot of reps last year. He's a converted safety and really started to come on strong towards the end of the year. So he's a guy that people should pay attention to. He might put up the best numbers of the three, and he looked fantastic this spring as well. There's a bunch of young guys behind him, so I don't know how big the rotation is going to be, but those three I think are going to be pretty solid players for the Utes this year.
I feel a lot better about this defense just realizing Demuni is actually back because he didn't play any snaps last year. I know he was hurt. I just kind of figured he was out of eligibility, but so he got the extra year or whatever.
He got his extra year, and now he's got an opportunity to finish off strong.
Nice, man. And then defensive back, Teo Johnson's back, Snowden's back. They do lose Gilman and Vaughn. What's your confidence level there?
Really, really high. In fact, I think the secondary will probably be better than it was a season ago. Teo Johnson, he's looking to have a big year. He wants to launch himself into the NFL. Rabbit Evans is the starting strong safety. He didn't win the starting job until about mid-year last year. He was still learning the playbook. Played really, really well the second half of the season. As a guy that they have high expectations for. True freshman Nate Tillman is a guy coming out of Texas that might get some play in that safety room. And the Utes are really, really high on him. He looked good in spring. He was, early enrollee. So I think the safety room is going to be good. Cornerback room should be really good as well. Smith Snowden had probably the best spring of anybody on the Utah roster. Like the light switch really went on for him. You're going to see him at nickel. You'll probably see him on the outside at corner. And then Scooby Evans is a returning starter from a year ago. They got 4 transfers in that are going to be competing for spots in that outside corner spot. So I think that even though there's a little bit of question mark in terms of what the depth looks like at cornerback, there's a really good chance that the secondary is better than we saw yet last year.
I look at the odds to win the Big 12, and Utah has been significantly hit. They were 12-1 a couple weeks ago, and I think people realize that it's a pretty good ball club. I'm a little part of that. But, man, this schedule, like what good Big 12 team do you miss? You play Texas Tech, you play Arizona State, you play Baylor, at Baylor, Kansas State, at KU, back-to-back weeks to finish season is like certainly not a cakewalk. I guess they don't play TCU and they don't play Iowa State, but like that's not much of a reprieve there. At least the non-conference is fairly manageable, I guess. That's a tough schedule.
Well, yeah, the conference schedule. Look, the good news is that at least they're getting like the home and aways.
Right.
They're alternating them, so you don't see those back-to-back road games. But it's a pretty tough schedule. And even look, West Virginia is a big question mark, but it's in Morgantown, and that's two time zones away. It's never easy.
Hard place to play.
Time zones, and it's a tough venue to play in, and who knows what Rich Rod's going to do there, right? So I think the Big 12. It's an interesting conference in the sense that look, I don't know who's going to win. I don't know who my vote for number one is going to be. I think it's a strong parity league. I think Texas Tech has a chance to be great great. BYU could be really, really good depending on what's happening with their quarterback situation right now. But, there's half a dozen teams that could win this thing, and Utah is one of them if all of the pieces come together. But the schedule is going to be tough. This is a team that they're going to have to come out of the gate strong against UCLA in the opener and really gel fast, and they're going to have to stay healthy. It's the thing that's really snake bitten them the last 2 years. But the 2 Rose Bowl years, they stayed relatively healthy, and they were a strong team, and they performed up to expectations. Look, Kyle Whittingham still knows how to coach. He still knows how to motivate, and it's a team that can win a lot of games. They just need to get the balls bouncing their way. But the schedule is not going to be easy. The road's probably one of the tougher ones in the conference if they want to get to that championship game.
Is there a number or goal where I think if you told Utah fans, like, yeah, that is a successful season for us this year?
Yeah, I think anything over – look, given the last couple of years, anything over 9 wins is a successful season in my mind. The bar is very high at Utah. I think that 10 wins is really what Utah fans would say would be a successful season. But look, if this squad gets to 9 wins – or gives themselves a chance to just get in that championship game, I think that they've done well. I think the ceiling is very, very high on this team. If Dampier is what we think he could be, if he shows improvement, if he's as electric as he's shown he was last year, the sky's the limit. The undefeated season's not out of the question. I'm not saying it's going to happen. It's going to be really, really hard. But even with all the question marks, when you look at that roster and it may look like a crazy thing to say, but there is a possibility. But I do think 9 wins there's a really solid chance for that, and 10 would be a great season in my mind.
Dan, really enjoyed it. It's been great to meet you.
Yeah, it's been a good time. Thanks for having me on.